Hey YouTubers, this is Bob Hickman. Hey, check out my new Wiccan t-shirt. What do you think of this, huh? Check out this. Let me take my pendant off. I thought you guys would like to see this. I just discovered this. I bought this at an eBay store, and I love it. I'm really into my Wiccan clothing this year, and you're going to be seeing a lot more of me wearing different mystical Wiccan symbols. Anyways, I thought you guys enjoy that, and I also enjoy my Pentacle Pendant. I showed you in one of my other recent videos this pentacle, except the other one I had a blue stone. I found out they also made it in a green stone, so I just bought one with a green stone. Isn't that cool? So it's like green goes with like my green shirt, so it's like kind of cool. I'm so glad you guys are here. Anyways, I wanted just to come here and say, first of all, I really appreciate all your support on my recent video on Ostara and the full moon ritual. If you didn't get to see that, check it out. It's the video right before this one. Anyways, let me just adjust my camera here. So we got too many things going on. Well, I want to come here today to talk to you about one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite books. The book that I'm talking about is known as Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. And this is written by Scott Cunningham. He is one of my all-time favorite authors. This was actually the very first book I ever read when I started to study the craft. A lot of you have written me and said, Bob, you know, I've been learning about the craft. I'm reading different things. It's kind of confusing. I don't know where to start. Well, you know what I like to say? Keep it simple. That is my motto. This book, you know, sometimes people knock it. I've heard some people in the Wiccan and pagan community go, well, Scott Cunningham's all fluff. I disagree. I think he is actually one of the most spiritually and profound Wiccan authors in the whole practice of modern day neo-paganism and Wicca. So I love him. I want to tell you a kind of story about how I got into his book. Many years ago, I was doing readings, and people would say to me, you know, Psyche Bob, you're a really cool witch. And in those days, I was not practicing Wicca. I was only doing spiritualism. And I was like, what? I'm not a witch. I'm a spiritualist. And I didn't understand what a witch was because it was not part of my practice in those days. And after hearing this several times, I thought, maybe I should find out what they're talking about. You know, that old saying, knowledge is power. So I went down to my local bookstore, and I found a section, the New Age Mystical section. And I saw on the edge of the aisle this word sticking out. It looked just like that, Wicca. I said, what is that? And I pulled the book off the shelf. This is actually like my third copy. My original one, I used it so much it got worn out. But it looked exactly like this. The cover, unfortunately, has stayed the same all these years. And I thought to myself, what is this? So I started looking through it, and I said, this is kind of different. It's got chapters on deities and magic. I said, well, maybe I'll buy that. So this was the very, very, very first book I ever bought. This is back in actually I think it was the late 90s, 99, 2000, around there. I've been doing the craft about 15 years now. And so this was the book that I bought. And I got it home, and I started reading it. And the wonderful thing about this book is it's just like Scott Cunningham is sitting down and talking to you, just like I'm talking to you now. It's not like a list of rules. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. No, it's very much like, this is kind of what we're into. This is the way it works. And you might find this experience or that experience. And it's really a very conversational book, and I really like that style. You know, if you're somebody who probably likes everything very delineated, this book may not speak to you as much. I have a friend who She said she couldn't stand this book because she said it didn't outline everything exactly. But then I guess, it's just different approaches to the craft. But if you're somebody who is more interested in the essence of the thing, the energy, understanding kind of the flow of energy, I think this book, Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner, is something that you're going to want to check out. I love this. Through the years, I always go back to it. And some people say, well, Bob, I already read that. That's a beginner book. I don't need that. But I'm going to challenge those of you who have read this, maybe even years ago, to either pick out your copy and reread it or get a new copy. The reason I say that is every time I reread this book, it's like something new comes out of it. I really feel like it's a living book. And it helped me to open my mind to the reality of the craft and to understand that mystery. And, Scott Cunningham liked to say, well, he didn't want to start a religious tradition. But I tell you, I think many of us who follow him would definitely say we're Cunninghamians. There's Gardnerians and Alexandrians, and I guess I'm a Cunninghamian. So, I know you would disagree with having a tradition, but I do think that his book has started kind of a movement. At the time, what's very fascinating about this book is at the time it was considered very, very controversial. In those days, when this original book first came out, I believe it was in the late 80s, mid-80s, or 85, 86 that the first edition came out. And when this first came out, many in those days were still very much into a hierarchical Wiccan structure where you had a high priestess and a high priest. You need to work through degrees. And Scott Cunningham challenged the status quo, and he said, well, who makes a Wiccan? A priest or priestess or the god and goddess? And that got a lot of people thinking. So he said, I think the god and goddess are more qualified. And he opened up the practice of the craft for many people who, before that time would have thought, well, I can't find a coven, I'm not interested, and, there's no way I can work without a coven. A lot of people had this concept, so they thought, well, the craft is just not going to work for me. And he said, basically, don't wait to find a teacher. If you find a teacher, that's wonderful. But if you don't, what's to say you can't commune with your deities? And I think he really speaks to the ultimate in spiritual freedom. So I really highly recommend this. Some of the sections that you'll find here, I'll just give you kind of an overview of the table of contents. It's divided into three parts. The first part is theory. Okay, section 1 is theory. And in that we have Wiccan, shamanism, the deities, magic, tools, music, dance, and gesture, ritual and preparation for ritual, the magic circle and the altar, days of power, spiral of rebirth, concerning initiation. That's all in section 1, theory. Section 2 is practice, and this is practice. He teaches you how to get in touch with the deities, how to get in touch with energy, how to get in touch with the spiritual elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And then the third section he gives is his own book of shadows. He calls it the Standing Stone's Book of Shadows. And he likes to say up front that this Standing Stone Book of Shadows is just his way of doing things. And he encourages people to feel free to alter the rituals to make it work better for them. So this is I just think it's a great book. I really cannot, it's hard to explain unless you've actually read it, how much it impacts you. And that's really, I guess, the best way to know it is to read it. So I highly, highly recommend it. It's interesting. It says over 400,000 copies sold. I think that number is even higher now, but it just shows you how powerful, popular this book is. It's interesting. You talk about, I always say with books, there are times in our lives when a book will speak to us or not speak to us. And it's interesting. I have one of the earlier copies. Some of you guys may have seen this if you've been in the craft a long time. This is actually the same book. This is Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. But this is the original release cover. And back in the early 90s, I was actually in a bookstore. And I actually saw this original book. And at the time, it didn't speak to me. I said, Wicca, what is that? I'd never heard of it. And I remember picking it up, and I didn't really spend much time with it, and I put it down. And I always think to myself, wow, you know, I wish I had bought this back at that time. And I think how much further along I would be in the craft. But then I go back and I said, well, you know, look where you were in your life. You know, and I really think when it comes to like a spiritual path, at certain times it's just not meant to be. But ever since I, you know, did discover the craft, I always remembered seeing this, and I used to think, I think that book I originally saw was the one that I currently have. And I sought it out through a used bookseller and did find it again. So I bought the original release. It's in mint condition. I don't read this copy. I keep this as a kind of a display piece. But I love it. It's from the early 90s with the original cover. Robin Wood, who did a tarot called the Robin Wood Tarot, used to do a lot of artwork for Llewellyn Publications. This is one of her paintings, and it's a lady casting a circle. I love that, you know. Now, the new cover is really cool because it has a guy sitting. He's made a little circle of herbs, and it looks like he's playing the panpipes. So he's casting a ritual in the field. It doesn't matter. The content is the same in each book. So, you know, it doesn't matter what the cover is. But I had to get the original because I just had to know, was that the same book I saw? And it really was. And as you can see, it's a Scott Cunningham. So anyways, guys, I'm going to encourage you, you know, this is a wonderful book. They have in it also a wonderful section on rune magic with various rune symbols and spells that you can do. And I really cannot speak highly enough of this book. They talk about the tools, how to set up an altar. He gives prayers and chants. They even have glossary. One of the things that's interesting that they did have to change, you know, Scott Cunningham is no longer with us. And so Llewellyn, I guess, takes it upon themselves to kind of maintain the publication. But in the back, I remember my original copy. To show you how times have changed, they list in the back resources. And they list occult suppliers, okay? Well, interestingly, I compared it to one of my earlier versions, and some of the stores are no longer existent, so they've changed, they've closed. And in my old copy, it was before the time of the internet, there were no websites, and now they have websites. So if you have an older copy, I'd say it's worth your time to pick up a newer copy to kind of get updated references for suppliers for things. So I encourage you that. But anyways, just check out the book, Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. If you've read it, so already read it, reread it. You know, but this is a wonderful book. It also has a second book, which is, hold on, let me find it here if I brought it today, the follow-on book, which is called Living Wicca. Now, this is an old copy. This was my original copy I bought. The cover art has changed on this one. I don't have the newest version. But this, again, is a Robin Wood one. And these are kind of rare. If you can get it with this cover, you know, it's kind of a collector's item these days. Living Wicca, A Further Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. I think I'll have to probably do a whole nother video on that, but they're kind of a set. So this was the original release of this one and the original release. And as you can see, they have the really cool cover art. I wish they kind of kept this. I think they're nicer looking covers. But, you know, never mind the covers. The content is what's so valuable, and they're still same. So you'll see this is the current release, what it looks like for Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. But anyways, I'm so glad you're here at Spiritchannel. Listen, keep it here. I promise you, We have messages from the spirit world. I'm going to do that on Thursday this week. And we're going to have more spell videos coming up throughout the weekend. So keep it here at Spiritchannel. I'm so glad you guys are here. Anyways, listen. Tell me, have you ever read Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner by Scott Cunningham? What's your thoughts about it? Have you read the earlier versions and the later versions? What do you think? Anyways, guys, listen. Tell me also, do you like my t-shirt? See, isn't that cool? It says Wiccan. Tell me what you think about that, too. Comments in the box below. Thumbs up. We'll see you back here on Thursday. Blessings to you.